What's going on, y'all? We got episode number 10. Let's Be Real podcast, man. And so, big one, man. 10 episodes in. And so, I wanted to do, a little bit something special with this one. So, for our wine today, man, I went with one of my favorites. This is actually the Housley 2019 Petite Sirah. So this is actually for anybody, y'all, who probably around my age. Remember the show Sister Sister? This is actually Tamara from Sister Sister. This is her winery out in Napa. So one of the dopest wineries I've been to. They got a little bar out there. So if you ever out in Napa, I definitely recommend. It's not like the traditional winery where you got the grapes and everything. It's more just like a little kind of wine bar out there. But they serve all their wines there. One of the best experiences I've ever had. And so I got my glass right here. I'm gonna be sipping on that. But tons of great wine, man. They, like I said, I got the Petite Sirah right now, but I mean, they have a late harvest is great, which is more of a dessert wine, sweeter wine, white wine. And they also got an incredible Old Vine Zinfandel. So those are the ones I've had. I've ordered them multiple times. I'll put the link to their website down in the description, man. Look, they're not paying me for this. I wish they were. But yeah, so this one specifically, though, you know how I like my wine, y'all. Bold, dry. Fruit you're going to get in it is kind of a black fruit, a little bit of jammy, and then it's oaky. And so great if you guys are having like steak, anything like that, definitely recommend. And so, look, that's what I'm going to be sipping on. So, hey, y'all, cheers to 10 episodes. But perfect, man. Look, now that we did that, we're going to have a great show today, man. Strictly football. I'm going to save all the basketball stuff because we're going to work on that basketball podcast or basketball episode here probably this week and get that out to y'all. So I'm going to save all my basketball stuff for that. But so today we just strictly football. We're going to be recapping some of the bigger games from this last weekend, some of the bigger headlines from this last weekend, and from this point into the week. And so we'll hop right into it, man, with Cowboys and Niners. So this is one of the most anticipated games of the week. And yeah, it ended up being close. It felt like most of the game, man, or most of that second half at least, that the 49ers were just in control. First half, it seemed like, we might have a shootout, but in just typical Cowboys fashion, man, they gave it up and just, for whatever reason, cannot beat the Niners. And so from the Niners point of view, man, Purdy, he had a good game, like nothing crazy. Numbers don't like explode out at you. But solid game, especially bouncing back from that game against the Chiefs, which arguably may have been one of his worst games as a pro. You got to like the way he came out and, got the ball to his playmakers. And this is what it's going to be for him moving forward for the rest of this year. I've touched on it before, but the rest of this year is basically, an interview for him on what that contract is going to look like and if the Niners want to pay him that money. And it's unfortunate that, you don't have CMC out there, although he's looking like he's going to come back here possibly in their next game. But, unfortunately, you guys don't have him. I'm very unfortunate that, Ayuk, he's going to be done for the rest of the year. But this gives you a really good look into, and I've said it before, it gives you a really good look into, what this team is going to look like going forward if you're paying Brock Purdy that, $55-60 million a year. And, from the opposite side of that, it's you're kind of seeing what it can look like with a guy who may not be one of those top 5-7 guys in the league who's getting paid. When you look over at the Cowboys, they had kind of a firsthand look of, okay, like this could be the worst case, or I wouldn't even say worst case, but this could be one of the bad scenarios that can come out of paying our quarterback that much and us losing that talent. Because when you look, we've talked about it before with the Cowboys, man, it's just it's so Dak and CD reliant. And, Dak is what he is, man. He is not going to be a guy who's going to be a top 5 quarterback in the league. He had that incredible year last year for him, second in MVP voting, but he's never been viewed as a guy who's going to, be the take over the team, lead the team to, Super Bowls and the most talented guy. And so if you're the Niners, that is a scenario that's very possible for you. And so I was very much on board of when Dak hadn't got his contract, I wouldn't have paid him because I would have wanted to see, and I thought this is what they were kind of going to be doing this year when they hadn't paid him all off season was, okay, we're going to see what you look like without these weapons because that's what it's going to look like if you get this bag. And so, they ended up caving in and paying him. But, the Niners are going through that same thing. So granted, they still have some superstars out there. And I would say from a coaching perspective, Shanahan is going to get so much more out of a middle of the road to high middle kind of quarterback than Mike McCarthy is. But at the same time, man, it's when you have those quarterbacks who are good, but making superstar quarterback money, it really does hamstring the team. And so, again, with the Niners, that's just going to be something that you're going to have to deal with. If I was the GM, I would almost, I would ride with Kyle Shanahan at this point. I'd go to him in the offseason and say, hey, man, can you do this with another quarterback that we get in the third, fourth, whatever round you want? Or do we need to pay Brock Purdy? And can we still be this, team that's competing for Super Bowls with him making $60 million a year? And it might end up biting you, but I think at this point with Kyle Shanahan and what he's been able to do with those, kind of middle of the road quarterbacks and what we've been seeing other offensive head coaches be able to do with these quarterbacks, I would heavily lean on him as far as if we're going to pay Brock Purdy or not. And then, like we said, the Cowboys side, man, you get Dak. Like I said, wasn't a fan of it, but he got his contract. And now you're seeing what the Cowboys are. And it's not a very good team when it's Dak and CeeDee Lamb with a little bit of Ferguson sprinkled in and a defense that's not great, who you're also got guys over there who need to get paid like Micah Parsons. And so if I'm the Cowboys, man, look, you're already sitting at third in division, 2 behind second place, which is the Eagles, and 3 behind the Commanders who are leading the division. So chances are, man, the NFC East is not going to be a division that's going to get 3 teams in the playoffs, right? And I don't see the Commanders and Eagles falling enough or the Cowboys winning enough for them to get in the playoffs or get that wild card or division lead. And so from the Cowboys, man, you really have to look at this from a standpoint of what are we going to do moving forward? You don't have too many more games left against easy opponents. You got 1 against the Giants and you got 1 against the Panthers. And I would even argue the Giants, man, that's not even a guaranteed win for the Cowboys. They're not, to me, not much better than the Giants. Now, they might walk in there, roll them over. But in similar sense of what I said about the Ravens and Browns, which we'll touch on later, but in similar sense of how I said it wouldn't shock me to see the Ravens lose, it wouldn't shock me if the Cowboys lost that game because they're not a great team and the Giants aren't a great team. And so, couple turnovers, who knows what happens. And so they got the Giants game and they got a Panthers game. Panthers, I would assume you win. If you lose to the Panthers, then you got bigger issues ahead. But what it brings up with them is a really kind of key moment for them. In as far as you got this trade deadline coming up, I can't see them being buyers because they haven't been buyers all year. Jerry said they were going all in and did nothing except re-sign Dak, re-sign CD, and give up their draft plans for a running back that they were going to get so that another team could take him before they could. And so that was their big moves. And so to me, I can't see them being buyers at the trade deadline because nothing up to this point from this offseason or this year has shown me that they're truly going for it. And so now, it might be a point, and I don't think they'll do this because I don't think Jerry Jones thinks he put together a team that can't compete. But it might be time to maybe be sellers at the trade deadline. Now, obviously, you got Dak is locked in. You're not going to be able to trade him. CD is locked in. You're not going to trade him because, he's one of the best wide receivers in the league. But when you look at that defensive side of the ball, Micah Parsons, who hasn't been paid yet. And again, he's a guy where, he's drawn the comparisons to a Lawrence Taylor. But in big moments, he's kind of right in line with the rest of the Cowboys and doesn't play his best football towards the end of the season and in the playoffs. And so with that talent, what can you get back? If that's, I don't know what you would get for somebody like that, but maybe worth looking into as far as moving on from Micah, moving on from maybe Diggs, just some of those defensive pieces that you have where teams right now that are looking to make pushes in the playoffs would be huge pieces for them, and they'd be willing to probably overpay for those pieces. And then, look, you can start retooling in the draft with some cheaper players. Hopefully you hit on a couple of those draft picks, which, look, the Cowboys have been good at hitting on some draft picks. And so, I think if I'm running the Cowboys, that's probably something I look at doing. You're probably going to have a turnover at head coach this year because, Mike McCarthy wasn't signed. And the way the season is going, doesn't look like he would get re-signed. And so I'm sure what you'll end up having is, another head coach that comes in with not too much backing as far as doesn't have a great resume or isn't like a known great head coach because Jerry's not going to hire somebody like that because he'd have to relinquish some control of the team and Jerry's not going to do that. So I would assume you get another guy who's kind of just been a head coach in the league. I could see, somebody, and I'm not saying this is who it'll be, but somebody who I think will get fired and the kind of level of coach you're going to get. And even this, actually kind of falls right in line would be like a Doug Peterson or somebody where, Jerry's almost throwing a lifeline out to a head coach who has won a Super Bowl and, has had some down years and just, so I could see something like that where him bringing in a coach where he doesn't have to relinquish too much so that way he could still build the team he wants. So it's his team and he's the one who gets the credit. But I would venture to guess that that's the kind of headline you're going to see at some point this offseason is some head coach. Belichick was tied to him. Can't see that happening because Belichick, greatest coach of all time, arguably. Can't see Jerry Jones giving him any power, which means I can't see him giving anybody else any power that would be worth bringing in. So if you're a Cowboys fan, not a lot to look forward to. Like I said, I don't think you guys are going to be sellers at the trade deadline to really get some picks to retool. And I don't think you're going to be getting a coach that's really going to put you over the top at all. But, as an Eagles fan, I love it because that means you guys are going to be stuck in mediocrity not only this year, but moving forward. And so, but that's what I kind of see kind of coming out of that. And again, Niners, they're in that jam-packed NFC West. They got I think they're in second place now behind the Cardinals. But look, that whole NFC West can be tough. And so the Niners, you guys are going to have to start stringing together some wins. And like I said, you should be getting CMC back, but still going to be missing Ayuk the rest of the year. And so we'll see kind of what Purdy looks like and what they decide to kind of pivot towards this offseason. And so sticking kind of with the NFC East here, let's move over. We got Bears Commanders, man. And this was a game I was, I'm going to come out. I didn't think Jaden was going to play. He hadn't practiced all week. And then shocker to me and shocker to my fantasy team where he's my quarterback. No, but Jaden comes in, plays. Look, I think when I saw Jaden playing, I was Jaden was going to play, I was expecting, okay, we're going to get this great. It's going to be a duel between both Rookie of the Year top candidates, and it's just not what we got, man. Jaden Daniels, you know, not great numbers, didn't play really great up until that kind of, Hail Mary that boosted him up some, that caused him to win the game. And Caleb, terrible, terrible the whole first half. And then, towards the end of the game, he started getting it rolling some. But, neither of them really came out and kind of took hold of the game. And so in that, I don't think either of them really came out and took hold of that Rookie of the Year race. I think Jaden was slightly ahead. I think he pulled a little bit further because of that win and because of, the Hail Mary that, we're going to talk about that a little bit later, but because that Hail Mary, and they pull out that win, Jaden, I think he gains a little bit more. So it's still going to be an uphill climb for Caleb. But look, even Caleb, he led arguably two game-winning drives, one that led in a fumble, one that led to them taking the lead before that ultimately led to the Hail Mary for the Commanders winning. But again, I think, it was a fun game, especially that second half and the way it ended, one of the most exciting endings we could have seen. But I think that Rookie of the Year race, again, Jaden a little bit further ahead, but I don't think either of them really full on took control of that race yet. And so we'll see what happens. But, from the Commander side, love seeing Jaden playing through, some rib injuries, which, if you're a quarterback like him who runs the ball and is a little bit, skinnier, you're going to have to be able to play through some stuff like that because you're going to take hits in the NFL, and there's going to be days you got some sore ribs, some sore whatever, and I love seeing him play through that. On the other side, Caleb, man, and we're Caleb, like we've touched on that. I loved watching what I saw from him in the fourth quarter. Led those two drives, and ultimately coming out with the loss, but put his team in a position to win, and put his team in a position that they should have won. And that's going to kind of move me into what I think the real storyline here is, man. And that's that the Bears coaching cost them this game. And, usually, and even with this, a lot of things, no matter football, baseball, basketball, it never comes down to one or two plays that, determine the outcome of the game. Because you can always go back to, oh, well, he missed this throw in the first quarter, and then what's the score then? But when you look at the situation of that last drive, or last few drives by the Bears and that last drive by the Commanders, legitimately, I would say that the Commanders coaching, or not the Commanders, the Bears coaching is the reason they lost that game. And so we're going to start off, man, with the goal line play. The handoff to your backup center. To me, in a game where, you're struggling on offense most of the game and you finally start getting some momentum, to me, it makes no sense to run a play like that. And I know everyone's going to look at the Lions and say, well, the Lions, they got running backs throwing the ball and they got, offensive linemen catching sweeps and doing this. And yes, they do. And it's a lot easier to do when your offense is rolling the way the Lions are. And every single game, they're rolling. The Bears, man, granted, coming into the game, you had been rolling, but for the whole, first three quarters, it was a struggle for them on offense. And so when you finally get some momentum, I would just rather, even if you just hand it off to Swift, I would rather see something like that or keeping the ball in Caleb's hands while he's rolling. Let him make a decision on pass, run it in. But again, it's just in a game that you hadn't been scoring and you finally get momentum, to me, handing it off to your backup center to run it in, just it does not make much sense to me. Next, we're going to go to, the and I don't know if this is something that a lot of people saw, but that second to last play that allowed the Commanders to even get in shot of that Hail Mary call. So this is almost as bad of a defensive job from of a defensive job as the last play on that Hail Mary. So what I mean is, one, you have Eberflus come out who said, yeah, that second to last play didn't matter. Which is strange to me because it was the exact play that allowed them to get in range of being able to throw that Hail Mary. So to me, you have to play on that play specifically. You got to play, even if you want to play the prevent everything, it has to be, short, and you got to keep them in the field of play. And so I think that was one of the worst defensive moves they could have made. And then it compounds with the fact that on this last play, aside from your defensive back who is talking trash to the crowd and doesn't even get involved in the play until the receivers are at the 20-yard line, right? To me, aside from that, the fact that you have a spy on Jaden Daniels on that play. So, unless you think Jaden Daniels, and you know what, maybe he does run a 60-yard run where he's breaking tackles, getting blocks, everything. I just can't see Jaden taking off being that far out. So the point of a spy is useless. You're basically just playing a man down now. Makes no sense to me at all. And so then we're going to let's get to the DB who, talking trash to the crowd all the way until you got receivers at the 20-yard line. He then turns, gets back in the play, and tries to go make a hero play, slapping the ball out. He is the one who slaps the ball that pops it in the air directly into the receiver's hands, who it turns out he was supposed to be boxing out. And so, again, one, if you that play before, if you just don't let them get some free yardage to get in that range, it doesn't matter. And so for your head coach to come out and say that play didn't matter, and then it gets compounded with the fact that you have a DB who is not involved in the game and then goes and tries to make a play and ends up tapping it to the guy that he's supposed to be covering. That comes down to coaching. That is just poor execution at the end of the day, comes down to coaching. Now, if it was me, that DB is suspended next game. I don't care what anything. He could be my best defensive back on the team. He's out next game. If he's my worst DB on the team, he's cut. Like, that is inexcusable from him. And then, again, from the coaching side, having a spy on that, it just makes no sense at all. So, yes, did Caleb play bad? Yes. Did he put you into a position to win the game? Yes. And then did the coaching, to me, completely let that team down? Yes. Now, I was big on prior to the year, I thought you should have fired Matt Eberflus and brought in one of these young offensive head coaches to just immediately come in with Caleb and then let them go. But now that you're in this position, that's a game where you're going to look back at it. And it's been a couple teams this year where it's a game where you're going to look back because now you're in fourth place. You could have been kind of right in the mix. You're a game behind third place in that division that is probably the best division in football. And that could be the game that determines whether you get into the playoffs or not. And so I think from a GM perspective, Eberflus, just the defensive calls, him saying that second to last play that literally put them in position to be able to make the last play, saying that didn't matter, and then just the inexcusable actions of the defensive back, that's a reflection on the coach. Between all those things, I think it's fireable. But at this point, you're still in the mix, and you are still you know, trying to make the playoffs. So I can't see them making that move. But I think if at the end of the year, if they do end up missing the playoffs and it is by, a game, 2 games, whatever, this is going to be one of those games they look back on as the reason why Matt Eberflus did not get a new contract. And so, gonna pivot now. Kind of, we'll go back to actually, we're gonna stay in the NFC East. Let's just do that. We'll stay in the NFC East, and we're gonna go Eagles Bengals. And man, look, shout out to the Eagles, man. Y'all played well. Now, granted, first quarter still scoreless on the year, and that does concern me. And that secondary, look, held up great. I think that was one of the best. Just not even just from the secondary, from the whole defense, one of our best showings this year, because the Bengals are a team that I think have a great offense. And so the fact that, going into halftime, it was close. That second half, the Eagles played incredible. I got nothing bad to say about them. It looks like what the plan is, and it's what I said it should be earlier, is, look, put less on Jalen's plate. You have Saquon, who has been an absolute monster all year. Ride him. And that's what they're doing now. You saw Jalen, I think he only threw about 20 passes. He's averaging, I think, like 18 to 20 passes a game now. And he still throws a great deep ball. Now that we got our receivers back, we got guys who can go get that deep ball. But it's this is what the offense needs to look like. It needs to be very Saquon heavy and just let Jalen play off that play action and make big plays and then run the ball like he has been. And so from the Eagles' perspective, man, great second half. Loved it. First quarter, we got to find a way to get some points up on the board in the first quarter. As far as Sirianni, it's never going to be an Eagles segment without me commenting on Sirianni. And man, it's just, I want to come out and say, hey, Sirianni, you know what? Great job. I love the way you've turned this around. But it's still just these little things that he does. And again, I still don't believe he really brings anything to the team. I don't. And, then you see at the end of the game, he's on the sideline and he comes up and starts messing with a player's helmet and the player pushes him off him. Not like, like body checking him, but like gives him a little like, get off me, man. Like, and it's just little things like that where it's like, if it was another coach, it'd probably be nothing. But with Sirianni, who's got this track record of just weird stuff and, players who there's reporting that don't like him and just it's kind of snowballed. Now when something like this happens, you have to know like it's something worth watching. And so again, man, I don't think he brings value. I think when we get into the playoffs, if we do lose, I think he will be the reason. I think he is more of a hindrance than a help as far as on the team. And again, just weird stuff, man, that I would just rather not have my head coach doing. And so on the other side, man, we got the Bengals. Look, I thought this could be a game that would have been a tough game for the Eagles. I thought, Burrow and that offense have been rolling. And I knew that their defense was terrible, so the Eagles was going to score. But that secondary and that defense for the Eagles, man, shout out to them because they came to play. And so the Bengals, man, look, no T. Higgins. They look like a different team without T. Higgins and without that second big-time receiver. Burrow still had a good game, but, without T. Higgins playing that Eagles defense that, they hadn't been the Eagles defense hadn't seen too many good offenses over the last week. This was a good offense. T. Higgins or not, this was a good offense, and they came out and showed out. And so if the Eagles can play defense like that moving forward, I think they'll be great. The Bengals, man, I think this is probably going to be the nail in the coffin of their year. And it's unfortunate because this was the year where it looked like, okay, they're going to keep T. Higgins on that last year. They haven't, they weren't going to pay players because they wanted to bring everybody back and hopefully go for it all again. And it looks like they're, going into week 9, probably going to be done unless they can go, you know, one loss, two losses at most the rest of the year. And I just don't think a team that's shown that they can't win games consistently in the first half of the year is going to all of a sudden flip a switch and start winning games consistently the second half of the year. So I think that's going to be done. Unfortunate because now they got big decisions to make with, T. Higgins, Jamar, some of these other guys. And so I think we're going to see the Bengals. I think it might get dark here moving, you know, towards this offseason and the next year. They might be kind of no longer that team that we look at as a dangerous team in the NFL. And staying in that same division, man, Ravens and Browns. So, look, I don't want to say I told y'all so, but I am gonna say I told y'all so, and I don't even mind it. And so, look, Ravens Browns, man, I told y'all Lamar has his struggles against the Browns team. He didn't play bad. 2 touchdowns. He threw for some big yards, but not a great game. I think he was around 60% completion percentage. So not kind of that Lamar that we've been seeing over these last few weeks. And Stefanski on the Browns, man, look, great coach. And he's finally got a quarterback that is not mid to low level bench play as his starter. And so, like I said, I thought Jameis was going to come in. He's going to put up some numbers. Stefanski, great coach with Jameis, and then even missing Amari Cooper, made some big time plays. Still got Chubb back there, and caught the Ravens sleeping. From the Ravens' perspective, man, similar to the Eagles, you can't have this running back that has been dominant all year only get 11 carries. It's not like they got down big and like had to start throwing it and slinging it around the field. Like, it was a game. There's no reason Derrick Henry should only have 11 carries. That's got to be one where, just like the Eagles, like I said with the Eagles and Saquon, you work through Derrick Henry because, as we've seen, he has a propensity of doing is you hand him the ball off. By the time that fourth quarter comes, bang, 70-yard run, 60-yard run. And when he can't get going, it takes a lot of pressure off that defense, and it puts a lot more pressure on Lamar. And so, I think, again, Ravens, they've since kind of last year, going into last year, they've had this kind of identity crisis of, do we want to be pass heavy and let Lamar cook, or do we want to be run heavy and we bring in Derrick Henry? So they're kind of just stuck in, they go back and forth based on the game, which to me is not a recipe for winning. And when we've seen them lose games, it hasn't been because they've fed Derrick Henry the ball 20 times, 25 times. It's been because he gets 10 or 11 carries. And something they did yesterday that I don't think it's going to help this situation, though, is, bringing in Deontay Johnson from Carolina. Now, didn't have to give up too much to get him. And look, I was on record saying I was hoping that the Chiefs would go get Deontay from Mahomes because I think he's a good receiver. But now, again, we're back to this whole thing with Lamar where, last year they fire Greg Roman, who's big-time run-heavy OC, because they want to do more of a passing game with Lamar. And then, they try to go heavy passing game against the Chiefs and they lose. And so then this year they come in and they're, sign Derrick Henry and we're going to run the ball more. And you have games like this where he has got 11 carries and now you're adding another wide receiver who's going to need the ball when Zay Flowers has already had, some previous, weeks in the year where he's come out saying that he needs to get the ball. And so, again, it's just, I would have rather see the Ravens go out and get somebody, like we're talking about the Cowboys, some of those defensive pieces, because that's where their team has struggled. They are the best offense in the NFL right now on a yards per game basis. I don't think they needed to add another wide receiver. I don't think that was their position to need. their position of need is defensively. They have one of the worst pass defenses in the NFL, and when you look at those teams that they might match up with in the playoffs, like a Kansas City or like a Buffalo Bills, I would trust those teams in a passing game shootout against the Ravens defense more than I would trust the Ravens offense, even with Deontay Johnson against their defenses. And so to me, and they, you know what, and we might get news here in the next 2-3 days, week before the trade deadline, that they do go out and get a defensive piece. And then, it's a whole different thing. But I just think the Deontay Johnson move isn't something I thought was necessary. I mean, and also again, it just again raises that question of, okay, what are they offensively? And so they got a lot to figure out there. Hopefully they do, because like I said, I think I've said it all year that they could be. Or I've said they are the scariest team. I think that title is now taken by the Lions, but the Ravens still a great team, and still would love to see them, in the playoffs, Lamar in the playoffs. So I think we'll see it. But again, it's just kind of, they need to figure out what it is that they want to do as a team. And then, look, we're going to pivot to the game. I said, look, if you were looking for a game that wasn't on that main slate of big time games, Cardinals, Dolphins, I told y'all last week that was my pick as far as a game I was going to watch because I thought it'd be exciting. And look, down to the last play of the game, last second of the game, we had an exciting game. Both offenses looking good. Glad to see Tua back out there. I know the Dolphins receivers were glad to see Tua back out there. But anytime you get, all on the same field, Marvin Harrison Jr., Kyler Murray, Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, it's going to be a fun game. And so it was a fun game. You got to see some big plays. And look, if you're the Cardinals, first place in the NFC West. And so, that, like we said before, that division is jam-packed. But first place in the NFC West, and look, their schedule isn't crazy moving forward. I think they got maybe 2 games where you can look at it and say that's probably a loss. But outside of that, man, like, they can go on a heater here, and look, it might be that, if they can handle business in games they need to handle business, that they win that NFC West. And so for them, man, it's tough, because with that defense, you never know what you're going to get. And so you can very easily lose games that should be winnable. But they're going to be right in the mix for this division, right along with all the other 3 teams. You got 3 of them at 4-4, and then I think Rams are 3-4 right now. And Rams got all their players back. And so that division is it's gonna come down to the wire, I think, between, I can't even say which ones. I would say if any team was to fall off and probably start falling behind, it'd be the Seahawks. But yeah, man, that division's crazy. So that's going to be an exciting one to just kind of watch out for the rest of the year. And then the other side, man, the Dolphins. Look, like I said, great to see Tua back out there. Played great. He, slid, which I know every Dolphins fan loved to see. If you like football and you were watching the game, I'm sure you'd love to see. But the Dolphins, man, look, I think I had said before that they had a chance to kind of hold water, go out, get Bryce Young at quarterback. And it's not like they didn't somewhat hold water, but I think now they're probably done for the year. I think this is kind of just too deep of a hole that they're in that division to really get out of it. The good news is outside of the division leaders in the AFC, and the AFC North having probably a for sure wild card team in there, there's a wild card spot wide open. And so if you can go on a little bit of a tear, maybe you get in. But to me, I can't see them getting it in, being this far down. I think they've only got 2 wins. Fact check me on that. But yeah, so I think they're out. But you got Tyreek locked up. You got Tua back. and see what happens. And maybe you're just looking at next year is looking at your year, and hopefully you guys stay healthy. But moving on from those games, man, let's just talk about some big headlines, some big things I think we need to watch out for going into this next week. And so I'm going to start off with the Giants, which is unfortunate for everybody because it means we're talking about the Giants. Only worse thing could maybe be talking about the Panthers or the Jets. But Giants, man, what I think they need to end up doing here, and this isn't some like breaking, like whole new thing that no one said, but it's time Daniel Jones gets out of there. You're done in the division, and moving forward, I would assume we all know that he's not going to be their starting quarterback moving forward. If he is, you know what, good for them. They like bad quarterback play out of their starting quarterback. But I think with a Malik Neighbors, you have a great receiver now, and you got to get him a quarterback. You got to get a quarterback who can win. And so with Daniel Jones, man, he is owed no guaranteed money next year. Now, granted, you're still going to take a cap hit, but no guaranteed money on his deal unless he gets hurt. If he gets hurt and it pushes into next year, he's got $23 million guaranteed. And so if I'm the Giants, man, you got to sit him. You got to sit him. It's the only reasonably smart thing to do for an organization who recently has not done too many smart things outside of draft Malik Neighbors. So I think that has to be the play if you're the Giants. I think Daboll is a great coach, and get him a quarterback. We've seen what these great offensive coaches can do with even competent quarterback play. And so just when we talk about, competent quarterback play, I want to talk about two things here and all tied in together. But first, we're going to talk about these young quarterbacks, man. Bryce Young and Anthony Richardson. So first, we're going to start with Anthony Richardson. Inexcusable. Inexcusable for you to check yourself out of the game as a quarterback because you're tired. Also, and I know this has been a big thing as far as, people saying, well, he shouldn't have said he was tired. He should have just, said, oh, my hamstring or my quad, whatever. I took that hit and I needed to get checked out. But I don't know if, people fail to realize that reporter who asked him that question specifically asked him, hey, were you hurt from the hit or were you tired? Which to me is just a wild thing for a reporter to ask, because I don't think any of us ever assume that a quarterback is coming out of the game because he's tired. And so to me, that sounds like somebody put that out there from that, inside the building. And I don't think it's a coincidence that gets put out. He's asked if he's tired. He says yes. And then he's no longer the starting quarterback. So I think that is very much a something that was put out there by the team, somebody internally, to that reporter to make Anthony Richardson look bad. And I have no problem with it. Look, that's how things are done. There are messages sent through the media in all sports. And Anthony Richardson hasn't shown anything that I think they owe him any more starts. That team is clearly being held back by Anthony Richardson, and it looks so much better with Flacco. And so that leads to, he's the second kind of young quarterback that's high draft pick that has now been sat in their second year. You got Bryce Young and you got him. And it just, to me, we're going to look at these two, and I'm going to compare it to another young quarterback who was sat, run out of town, and now is showing promise. And that's Malik Willis with the Packers. So, and we've seen it with other quarterbacks, man. You get in the right situation, and it's strange because I think the Colts head coach, I forget his name right now, but I think he is a good offensive mind. I think he is one of those guys. So maybe it just speaks to Anthony Richardson not being ready to play. He was a project when he was drafted, and I get you got to, when you're in the AFC, you got to, shoot for biggest upside because you can't have a low ceiling, high floor kind of guy as your quarterback if you're going to compete in the AFC. And so I get it from the Colts point of view, but I also get, look, we've seen it with some of these other guys who are great offensive minds, like Shanahan, draft Trey and willing to pivot off quick. I think they've seen enough of Anthony Richardson now that probably going to pivot off quick, see what you can get, and try your luck again in the draft. But it just, again, it shows when you get these great offensive coaches in the league like Matt LaFleur, Kyle Shanahan, Kevin O'Connell, Andy Reid, like they can take these quarterbacks who are good, like we've talked about in a Purdy situation, or like in Malik Willis's case, and turn them into winning quarterbacks. And so that's why so much I wanted to see Bryce Young go to the Dolphins with one of these, with Mike McDaniels, another guy, great offensive coach who has weapons there, and see what he can do. Because look, he goes out and he plays well for you, shows what he can do. That boosts his value as far as a draft pick. And so, or if you're the Dolphins, it gives you, maybe the best backup in the league, like I would argue Malik Willis might be right now. And so, again, I think these young quarterbacks, a lot of it is just where you land. Again, I think the Colts head coach, I think he's one of those guys. And so Anthony Richardson might just not be ready to play in the NFL. He might need that work. So maybe they do just hold on to him and let him learn and see what they got. But as of right now, I mean, a lot of work to be done. Not only in the fact that, you can't come out when you're tired at the quarterback position, but also just from a throwing the ball perspective. And the last thing I want to talk about, man, is look, the Bills. I'm going to give y'all your credit. I thought y'all were going to lose against the Seahawks because you guys don't beat good teams. And look, I know the Seahawks are now 500, but I consider them a good team. Not a great team, but a good team. But it's still, I feel bad. I don't even feel bad. But I know it's going to sound hypocritical of me to say that I still don't believe in the Bills after I picked the team that they played against to beat them, and they rolled them. But facts are facts, man. Look, they're 6-0 against 500 or below teams. And the Seahawks are included in that because they're 500. They're above 500 when you played them. So, you know what? Let's say 5-0 against sub 500 teams. And with the Seahawks included in this other side, they are 1-2 against teams that have a better than 500 record. So, to me, man, still a lot to prove. But that game went in a step in the right direction as far as making me believe more in the fact that you guys can beat good teams. But man, look, that's it for today. Look, I appreciate all y'all again. Once again, man, definitely go get you guys a bottle, Housley. Like I said, Petite, Sirah, Zinfandel, Old Vine Zinfandel, and the Late Harvest, my favorites. Thanksgiving's coming up. Great wine for Thanksgiving. That's what we're gonna pop the Zinfandel and that Late Harvest for Thanksgiving. So I definitely recommend y'all getting that. And then as always, y'all, I appreciate you watching. Like, comment, subscribe to the YouTube, Spotify podcast, Apple podcast, wherever y'all want to listen, watch. And look, I appreciate y'all as always. And be on the lookout. We got another episode this week, and hopefully we get our NBA special episode out as well. But appreciate y'all for 10 episodes, and we'll talk later.